Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Martello. We are going to look at section 4.1 and I'm on page 176 if you want to follow along with me. So in this chapter we're going to still focus on slope-intercept form, but now we're going to focus on writing the equations in slope-intercept form. So just a quick reminder, remember that slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So this is the form that we use most often with linear equations. Remember that our m represents the slope and our b represents the y-intercept. Okay, so that's important to remember those two things when you're writing your equation. Let's take a look at example 1. So in example 1 it says write an equation of each line with the given slope and the given y-intercept. So they're actually just giving us the m and they're giving us the b. So in part A, our slope is -3. We're going to plug that in for our m. And our y-intercept is 1/2. We're going to plug that in for b. And that's it. That's your equation. Y equals -3x plus 1/2. And that's slope-intercept form. Let's look at part B. In part B, it says the slope is 0 and our y-intercept is -2. So we're going to plug in 0 for our m, and we're going to plug in -2 for our b. Now this one we do want to simplify. We know that 0 times anything is just going to cancel out, so we can get rid of this whole term, and we're just left with y equals -2. Just to kind of talk about this equation a little bit, the equation y equals -2 would be an equation of a horizontal line, which makes sense because it has a slope of 0, and a horizontal line has a 0 slope. So because it's y equals a number, that's just a horizontal line with a 0 slope. Let's take a look at example 2. So now we're going to do a similar idea here, but we're going to get the slope and the y-intercept from looking at the graph and then write our equation. So here's our first part. For part A, we're going to look at this graph here. So the first thing that we can do is look at the slope. So in the book, they find the slope by using the slope formula from 2 points, doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Me personally, I find it easier to just count rise over run on the graph. So I'm going to count rise over run on this graph. I'm going to start from this point on the left and move towards this point on the right. Let's count the rise so that I'm even with this second point. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my rise is 6, which is what they found here. And now I'm even with the point. Let's run to the right. I'm going to run 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what they got down here for their run. So 6 over 4 reduces to 3 over 2, and that would be our slope. Next, we need to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is this point right here where the graph crosses the y-axis, and we're just looking for that y-coordinate, which would be -3. So that means our y-intercept is -3. We're ready to plug this into our equation. We want y equals, my m is 3 over 2 times x, and then plus our b is -3. So instead of saying plus -3, we can say -3, and there's our equation. Let's do the same thing for b. We're going to count the slope first. I'm just going to go rise over run. I'm going to go from this left point to this right point. Let's start by rising down. We're going 1, 2, 3 down. Since I'm going down 3, that would be a slope of -3. Then I'm equal with the point. Let's run to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. My run would be 4. So my slope is -3 over 4, or you can say -3/4. Now we still need to find the y-intercept. Look for the point where it crosses the y-axis. So that would be this point right here, 0, 2. And we just need the y-coordinate, which would be 2. So our y-intercept is 2. Let's write our equation. Y equals, our m is -3/4 times x plus our b is 2. And that's all we have to do for that. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to look at example 3. So in example 3, we are going to do the same exact thing. We're going to write our equation in slope-intercept form. But now we're going to be given 2 points here. So let's use this information, write the equation that passes through the given points. So if I have 2 points, the first thing that I need to do is I need to find the slope. So to find the slope, this is really where I want to use that slope formula that we were talking about before. So that slope formula is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. That's the slope formula we're going to use between these 2 points. Just be careful that you're remembering what each of these stands for. This is the first x, so that's x1. This is the first y, that's y1. This is the second x, so that's x2. And then this is the second y, so this is y2. So x1, y1, x2, y2. And that just means that this is the first x and the first y. This is the second x and the second y. Let's plug this into our formula. So if we do y2 minus y1, that would be -1 minus 5, -1 minus 5. Over x2 minus x1, that would be 0 minus -3. 0 minus -3, or you can say plus 3. So in the numerator, this would become -6. In the denominator, this would become +3. -6 over 3 equals -2. That would be our slope. Now we need to find the y-intercept. I want you to look carefully at these 2 points. This point should stand out to you because look at the x-coordinate is 0. When the x-coordinate of a point is 0, that means that this point is on the y-axis, which means that this point is the y-intercept. So our y-intercept is just the y-coordinate of this point, which is -1. Now we're ready to write our equation. So we found our slope is -2. We found our y-intercept is -1. So y equals -2x minus 1. Let's do that again. We're going to go over here to example 3b. So let's find the slope. I'm just going to remind you this is x1, y1, x2, y2. Let's plug it in the slope formula. So we want y2 minus y1, so it'd be -5 minus -5, or you can say plus 5. That would give me 0 in the top. And then for our denominator, x2 minus x1 is 8 minus 0, which is going to give us 8 in the denominator. Now we want to simplify. 0 divided by anything would just be 0. So we have a slope of 0. Now we're ready to find our y-intercept. Look at the 2 points, and you see how this first point has an x of 0? Well, whenever the x is 0, that means that this point is on the y-axis, so this is our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is -5. Now we're ready to write our equation. When we write the equation, we're going to plug it in, so it would be y equals, my slope is 0, x, and then my y-intercept is -5, so -5. But I want to simplify this. 0 times anything just cancels out, so I just want to write my equation as y equals -5. Okay, we're going to do some more practice problems like this together. So we're going to jump down to these monitoring progress questions down here at the bottom, and we're going to do some of these together here. Let's take a look at monitoring progress number 2. So in monitoring progress number 2, it's telling me that my slope, that's the m, is 1 over 3. And it's telling me my y-intercept, that's the b, is -1. Let's plug it in and let's write our equation. So our equation would be y equals, my m is 1 over 3 times our x, then it would be plus b. So instead of writing plus -1, I'm going to write -1. And that's it. That's all I have to do to write the equation. Let's do number 4. Number 4 is looking at a graph. So first let's find the slope, and I'm going to use rise over run to count the slope. Okay, I'm going to go from the left to the right. Let's count. I need to go down 2 until I'm even with this point here. So I'm going down 2, my rise is -2. It's negative because I went down. Now I'm going to count my run. Let's move to the right. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So my slope would be -2/5. Next up, let's find our y-intercept. So our y-intercept will be the b. Let's look at our graph here. This is the point where it crosses the y-axis. So our y-intercept would be the y-coordinate, which is -1. Let's write our equation. Our equation in y equals mx plus b would be y equals -2/5x and then -1. And there's our equation. Okay, we're going to do number 5 together next. Let me write down the 2 points. We have 0, -2, and 4, 10. Okay, we're going to find the equation of the line. Our first step is to find the slope. So to find the slope, let's write down the slope formula is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Let's label our points here. Remember, this is x1, y1, x2, y2. Let's plug all of our numbers in. So we want y2 minus y1. That's going to be 10 minus -2. And if I want to, I can rewrite it as so it's 10 plus 2, same thing. Let's do the bottom, x2 minus x1, so that's going to be 4 minus 0. Let's simplify. 10 plus 2 is 12 over 4 minus 0 is 4. Simplify again. 12 over 4 equals 3. That's my slope. Now let's say the y-intercept. Our y-intercept, the b, is just this point right here. When our x-coordinate is 0, that's the y-intercept, so our b is -2. Let's write our equation. Our equation now is going to be y equals, my m I just found was 3x, and then my b is -2, so -2. Y equals 3x minus 2. Okay, we're going to look at one more question here. Let's look at a real world example. And I'm going to go into the exercises from 4.1, and I'm looking at number 30. Just so you can, if you want to look too, I'm on page 180. Page 180. We're looking at number 30. So we're modeling with mathematics. It says a recording studio charges musicians an initial fee of $50 to record an album, and then studio time costs an additional $75 per hour. Write a linear model that represents the total cost of recording an album as a function of the studio time in hours. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. When we're looking at a word problem, we need to make sure that we keep in mind our slope-intercept form. We need y equals mx plus b. We need to know the slope, and we need to know the y-intercept. Our slope, or our m, in our problem, remember that the slope is going to be a rate of change. Remember that our slope represents the change in y over the change in x. So the y changes for however much the x changes. That's what we're looking for, is a rate of change. Remember that a rate, the key giveaway, is kind of like the word per or each or every. So if you see the word per or each or every in the word problem, that's a dead giveaway that that number represents the slope. Next up is our b, which we know is the y-intercept. Our y-intercept, just like how when we graph on a graph with our y equals mx plus b, the y-intercept is the starting amount. Or in other words, it's the initial amount. The initial amount. So remember also that any point that has a y-intercept, the x-coordinate is going to be 0. So whenever x is 0, that's what we're looking for in the problem. But that is the starting amount in each problem. So now let's go back to this problem number 30, and let's see if we can identify our m and our b from the word problem. So let's read it again. A recording studio charges musicians an initial fee of $50. That right there is our y-intercept. What do I have to pay initially to record? And no time has passed. There are 0 hours. Just to get in the studio, I have to pay $50. That 50 is my starting amount, my initial amount, which would be my B. Let's keep reading. The studio time costs an additional $75 per hour. This is a rate of change. $75 for every hour. So the 75 is the dollars, 1 hour is the time that's passing. That's my rate of change. That's gonna be my slope in this equation. So I'm ready to write my equation. I have my M, I have my B. My equation is gonna be y equals 75x plus 50. And that's it. We have our equation from our word problem. Okay, that was part A. Let's go on to part B. Part B says, is it less expensive to purchase 12 hours of recording time at a studio or $750 software that you can use to record on your own computer and explain? So let's take this 12 hours at the recording studio. Let's find out how much that costs, and then we'll compare it with the $750 if I were to buy it on my own. So my first step is let's plug in x equals 12 into this equation that I just created here for part A. So we want y equals 75 times 12 plus 50. Let's plug this into our calculator. So 75 times 12, I get 900 plus 50. That's gonna mean that this costs $950 for 12 hours at the studio. Okay, let's compare this to that other amount that they were saying. $750 for music software program that you can use to record your own computer. Yeah, which one's less expensive? Definitely the software, because I would pay $950 at the studio, only $750 for the software. So the software is less expensive.